All right, guys. So now in this video, let's talk about CSS with HTML, how to use CSS with HTML. So let's suppose that we have created our web page using HTML code, and we want something which can present our web page in a correct format and visibly attractive. So to do that, we can style our web page using CSS properties. So CSS is actually used to apply the style in our web pages, which is made up of HTML elements. So with CSS, you can describe the look of, of the web page. It's going to give you styling properties such as the background color, the margin, the padding, the border, and many more other properties that you can use to style your web page. For example, if you want a particular HTML element to display on the left side of your web page, you can do that with CSS. Okay, so each property in CSS has a name and a value, and so if you put the name of the CSS property, you need to also assign a value to that particular property, and each property is separated by a semicolon. So in this video, I'm going to give you 3 ways you can use to actually apply CSS to your HTML document. Okay, so the first way is going to be the inline CSS. So the inline CSS is going to allow you to define your CSS properties using the style attribute in the HTML elements. And then we have the internal or the embedded CSS, which is actually defined using the style tag in the head section. I'm going to show you that. And then we have the external CSS. So this is going to define all your CSS properties in a separate file, and that file will be stored in a CSS format. Okay, and then you have to include that file or the URL, the link to that file, with your HTML file using a particular tag in section. So let's first talk about the inline CSS. So the inline CSS is used to apply CSS in a single element. So it can apply the style uniquely in each element. For example, if we have a paragraph like here, let me close the tag here. I'll come to this website and copy some text. Let me copy that, and if I come back, I'll paste it in here. So the inline CSS would be to say that in this particular paragraph, I am going to use the attribute style, and the values that I will assign to this attribute are going to be CSS properties. For example, I can say color is equal to blue. So as I said, CSS properties must be separated by semicolons. Okay, so if I say color blue, I need to put colon here for it to work. Yeah, so now you can see how this is working. I can also say that I want the font size to be 40 pixels, for example. So now you can see the font size has increased. If I say 20 pixels like this, there you can see the font size. Another thing I can add as a CSS property, I can say that I want the padding to be 15 pixels, like this. So this is going to apply the padding And maybe the last one, I would say font style, italic, semicolon. Okay, what's going on? Yeah, so it's italic if I say like this. Yeah, so now we can see our font style as applied to our text. So as I was saying, so the inline CSS is used to apply CSS in a single element. Okay, so here the CSS is only applied to our paragraph. You will see that if I added maybe h1 tag here and say title here, for example, you will see that the h1 would not be concerned by this styling that we have put here. So the inline CSS will only allow you to apply style uniquely in each element. So if you want to apply some styling to your h1, you will have to come inside h1 here and write style equal, and then maybe say color if you want to change the color of the text to red, for example. And there you will have, the styling applying to your element. So as I said, you need the style attribute here to apply the inline CSS, and then we can also use as many properties as we want, but each properties must be separated by a semicolon, as I've shown you here. So this is the inline CSS. The second way you can apply CSS to your HTML document is to use the internal CSS. So what is the internal CSS? Let me remove the style here. So it will come back to default styling. And now we are talking about the internal CSS. So an internal CSS will contain the CSS properties for a web page in the head section of our HTML document. So we can see that here we have the style element in the head section of our HTML document. And inside the style here, that's where we are going to write our CSS properties. Okay. So we can also use the internal CSS using the class and IDs, attributes, and all of that. But I'm going to show you that. We can use internal CSS to apply a style to a single HTML page. So the style that we are going to write here are only going to be applied to this particular HTML document. So for this particular HTML page. Okay, so now let's write some text, some CSS properties. So like here, if we want to have some style to our h1, our heading here, we will say h1 like this, and in the curly braces we will write our CSS properties and then assign values to that. So if I write like this, now we can see the CSS has applied to the heading. If I say, for example, font size like this, 20 pixels, semicolon, there you can see it has applied. If I increase the size and all of that. So the same thing will be if I want to apply some CSS to my paragraph. So I will say P like this. And maybe say color, blue, semicolon. Like this. So now you see it has applied. I also said to you a couple of minutes ago that we can also use classes and ID attributes to assign some CSS properties. So that's what I'm going to show you. For example, if let's say that we have multiple paragraphs. If I come here, I'll close this P like this. This will be a different paragraph. And down here, I'll close that. Maybe the third paragraph will be this one. So I have 3 paragraphs. So in this particular paragraph, I'm going to have a class that I will call para1. And as for this second paragraph, I'll say, and I have a class that I will call para2. And the third paragraph, instead of having a class, I will say that this one has an ID of para underscore ID. Say like this. Okay, so I can choose to apply some CSS styling to each of these paragraphs using their classes, okay, or the ID. Let's say, for example, I want different colors for my paragraphs. So maybe for paragraph 1, I would say para 1 like this. I want it to have the color blue. So if you want to use the class, if you write it like this, you can see that it is not applying, okay? It's not going to work like this. So what we have to do is that we have to write period like this and then the name of the class. So that's how the browser is going to recognize that this is actually making reference to a certain class that you added in your HTML element. Okay, so if you don't add, the period, it's not going to apply the styling. But if you add the period, this is the way you declare, if I can call it like this, a class in CSS. So for the second paragraph, we can say para2 and color is green. For example, now you can see that the second paragraph will have the color green. Yeah, second paragraph is having the color green. For the third paragraph, we didn't give it a class, we gave it an ID. So if you want to declare an ID here, what you are going to do, you say, okay, you use the sharp symbol like this, and then write the name of the ID. So it's para underscore ID like this. And as for this one, we want to give it the color yellow. So if we say yellow like this, semicolon, and there you can see that the text is yellow. Okay, so if you say maybe purple, I don't know if it's gonna work. Yeah, purple, that's, you can see purple. Okay, so this is how you use internal CSS. Okay, you can use internal CSS to declare to apply some CSS styling to your web page. And as I said, with the internal CSS, we can work with class and add IDs and all of that. You can also directly work with the HTML element directly. And then there is a third way to apply CSS, which is called the external CSS. Okay, you can actually use an external CSS. So an external CSS is going to contain a separate CSS file which will only contain your CSS code using, the class names, the ID names, the tag names, and all of that. So we can also use the CSS file, that particular CSS, external CSS file, in any HTML file by including it in our HTML file using the link tag. Okay? So if I come up here, so the link tag, I can remove the style element here. And if we want to use an external CSS, I'm only going to show you because here I'm using a non-line editor. But if you are using, an editor that you have installed on your machine and you want to use an external CSS file, this is how you are going to do that. So what you are going to do, first you need to create your HTML file, and then you are going to create your CSS file and save it using the .css extension. And this file is only going to contain your CSS code. And then you have to link that CSS in your HTML file using the link tag in the header section of your HTML document. So the header section is here. So I'm going to say link. So that's the tag that you need to use. And you have the attribute here, and that attribute you need to write style sheet. Okay, so that is to say that you want to link a style sheet. You need to specify the type. So you say text /CSS. And then you need to specify the URL or the path to your CSS file. So you write the path if it is in the same directory or in the same folder as your HTML file. So you simply write the name of your CSS file. Most of the times you write style.css because you are going to call your external CSS style, okay? Because it's going to be used for styling your web page. Okay, you can say style.css, but if it is not, that particular CSS file is not stored in the same folder as like your HTML file, maybe you can add the name of that particular file here, maybe style underscore maybe CSS /style, something like that. Okay, so depending on where you have stored your CSS file, you can copy the URL and then paste it down here. So this is how you actually link your external CSS. And as I said, in your external CSS, you are going to write all your CSS code. Okay, so that's what I wanted to tell you about. And as I was saying, here I'm using an online editor. So if I come here and I open the CSS portion of the screen, let's say, for example, this is the external CSS, and inside my external CSS file, I'm going to write my CSS code. So let's say, for example, I want for my paragraph elements, if I want to maybe apply a color, and I would say blue, for example. You see, now you have the color blue showing on the screen. If I want to use the classes, I'll say that para1, for example, and I will say font size, and I want to say 25 like this, semicolon. So now you can see the font size has changed. If I want to use maybe the ID that was para underscore ID like this. Maybe say that I want a different font style, so I'll say font style like this, and italic, semicolon. There you see that the italic is going to apply to my, the third paragraph, because in the HTML we called the third paragraph that. All right. So guys, that's what I wanted to show you, how to work with CSS, with HTML, how to link your CSS in your HTML, 3 ways to apply CSS in HTML. So I hope the video was informative enough. If you still have questions about that, feel free to write in the comment section, and we can continue a discussion there. So don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to this YouTube channel for more videos like this one. Let's meet in the next one.